mixing is one of the many fun aspects and one of the many really difficult aspects of recording. It's again like other things I was talking about. The clearer idea you have going in, the less painful it can be. Because mixing can be really painful because you can be really unsure, and it makes such a huge difference. You know, the subtlest changes can really affect the story you're telling. I like to sort of go back to what kind of a story is being told. Something that a lot of, you know, I don't know if other people think of it that way. Some people, I think a lot, you know, sort of like, how does it sound? And of course you want it to sound good, but the clearer idea you have of what the story of the song is, the better notion you have to guide you when you're mixing. So, you know, mixing, I mean, traditionally it's a matter of you sort of get your drums into a point where they're sitting roughly well with each other, and I mean, this is sort of a common thing. You sort of add the bass in, you sort of build it from the skeleton or the ground up that way, and then start adding the elements. But you want to make sure your foundation is clean and doing what you want first, and then you can add all the other stuff. You know, another thing that a lot of I think home recordists forget is the most important thing. It's so boring, it's so much less fun. The most important thing is, where is the vocal sitting? I mean, you know, it is by a wide margin the most important thing in the mix, and it's such a bore because it's not that creative. You know, I mean, it can be creative. You can do creative things with effects and so forth, but generally, you know, it's just getting it to sit in the right spot where it either is hovering over the mix or occasionally gets slightly buried by the instruments in a way that creates drama, where it sounds like the singer is fighting through the mix, can also be good, but sort of focusing on what's happening in the story of the song, so that, you know, not that you're doing any crazy, like, effecty things to tell the story, but just be clear about what you're trying to deliver. And generally what you're trying to deliver is the vocalist, and the instrument's power is kind of helping support that. I think a lot of people recording at home get lost with the genius of their ideas, you know, their instrumental things and their effects, and then they put the vocal in, it just kind of sits there, usually a little too low, and it kind of sits there. And vocalists are all over the place, and generally I spend a lot of time riding a vocal, you know, particularly if you're recording at home, where you can really draw out the level of the vocal, but or if you're working in a studio where you have either, you know, or probably both great compressors and also automation in your mixing, you know, a word here or there can make a song. I mean, I'm a believer that, or can, more importantly, can ruin a song if there are elements, points where a key line gets dropped, or it's not that, even if it's at a point where people don't necessarily consciously notice that, oh, the vocal's too loud or the vocal's too quiet, because it's not that too loud or that too quiet, but if it's a little off, the listener has to work in a way that it's unpleasant, I think, without them realizing, and the reaction becomes, I don't know, it's not really grabbing me, or whatever. They don't know why, but that subtle difference keeps people with the vocalist, you know, knowing when to be a little loud and when to be a little soft. And so that's something that, you know, is not fun to do because it's so painstaking, but it's essential.
It's an extension of performance.
Yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, when you're mixing, it's like very much an element. It's like, you know, there've been, like, I've done vocal mixes in you know, where with automation, and you see the level on and even with a compressor on it, the level of the vocal is, I mean, it's going, you know, it's like shaking around on every words and parts of words and sweeping up and doing doing totally crazy things. So in a way it is performing, but, you know, you're trying to get the best performance, and, you know, sometimes you get it, and you know, particularly these days, I don't think people have the same mic technique that, you know, in another generation, you know, Lennon or, you know, Frank Sinatra, all those guys, like, you know, I've read stories, but they all really knew how to work a microphone to, like, get the perfect level that they wanted. but people today, generally those techniques have been, I think, somewhat lost. So it means that the guys mixing have to kind of do it for the singer, which is painstaking but really important. It's too bad that they don't know how to do that. But if you watch, I mean, I've heard Lennon in the studio used to do these like things of like putting his hand in front of his mouth on certain words to like cut his P's and stuff, and turning away. And or if you watch those old 60s perform, they're doing all this kind of stuff, and you see kids now and it's and they're here, and it's like sometimes you don't want it in your face, and you need to not just back it up, but sometimes like points where you want it to sound a little quieter, but then you also want to add a little more reverb at that point. So there are things that like that I'll do, that we're actually changing the level of reverb depending on the word to get it to sit in the mix. So whatever, I'm talking a lot about the least fun part of mixing, but I think it's the most important part, and it's a part that a lot of people, I think, don't pay as much attention to.